This is a journey of discovery, a trip through a parallel world, a world where words such as bizarre, quirky, weird or wacky seem the most appropriate. But the host of petty kings, princes and presidents who inhabit the bizarre world of micronations may equally be described as individual, courageous, single-minded and original. In truth, most are a mixture of both. So, welcome to the fascinating world of micronations. But first of all, what exactly is a micronation? With several important qualifications, a micronation is any entity which purports to be or has the appearance of being a sovereign state, but up till now has received little or no recognition. Many micronations exist solely on the internet or in the imaginations of their creators. Typically, they are created and maintained by one person or family. A few have a more corporeal existence, making territorial claims over, or occasionally even physically occupying, defined geographical locations, albeit often tiny, remote or uninhabitable ones, and producing all the artifacts of statehood, such as stamps, coins, banknotes, passports, medals, coats of arms, and of course, flags. There are two conventions that govern the condition of statehood. The Montevideo Convention, or declarative theory, which states that only four things are necessary for statehood. 1. A territory, 2. A population, 3. A government, and 4. The ability to enter into discussion with other states. The second convention is the constitutive theory of statehood, which adds a fifth criterion, that of global recognition. Unfortunately, most of the macronations of the world prefer to abide by the constitutive theory, which effectively rules out the territorial claims of most micronations. It would appear that the global community is a very exclusive club indeed. However, I have chosen to focus only upon those would-be states that comply with the former, the Montevideo Convention. One of the earliest of these unrecognised nations, the Principality of Sealand, was founded in 1967 by erstwhile pirate radio DJ Roy Paddy Bates. This tiny state is situated on what was Ruff's Tower, just 7 miles off the Essex coast. I contacted Prince Michael, the heir apparent and acting head of state of Sealand.
There have been many court cases that have gone in our favour. We've been 35 years ruling our own destiny, both financially and physically. There have been no officials out there at all over 35 years. We've had total control of the territory and what goes on it.
There was an incident where we fired some warning shots at an official vessel, well, not at it, but up in the air I think it was in fact, and it turned into a court case with the British government. Ended up in Chelmsford Assizes, and well, we were found not guilty due to the British government had no jurisdiction at all.
Vintage English comedy followed. The government extended British domestic waters to 12 miles to try to bring Sealand back into the fold. But Roy preempted them by extending Sealand's territorial waters to 18 miles the day before.
The tests are, is there an identifiable place? Is there an identifiable people, a population? And is there an autonomous sovereign government? And the answer to those questions in respect of Sealand are yes, yes and yes.
I think there's too much damn bureaucracy in the world right now. Too many people doing as they're told by everything. Not enough independence, not enough free will going in the world. It's about time that somebody said, I'm going to do something and do it.
Kingdom of Elleore is located deep in Denmark's Roskilde Fjord and is one of the longest-lived micronations of the modern era. The kingdom was founded on August the 27th, 1944, and is unoccupied save for a week-long annual gathering attended by dozens of citizens who say they are returning home after a 51-week holiday. These 7 days are known as Elleore Week, at which the ceremonial enthronement of the reigning monarch takes place. Visiting the island can only be done during Elleore Week, and then it is only citizens who may camp there. Leaving behind the quaint and fairy tale island of Elleore, I set out for perhaps one of the strangest places of my journey. The minute Republic of Gust lies in the French department of Pyrénées-Atlantiques and is the first of those postage stamp states that are a throwback to history. For centuries, Gust was governed as an independent republic and was never formally annexed by France. Indeed, its independence was recognised by both France and Spain in 1648. The Republic consists of about a dozen households, numbering no more than 100 souls. These rural folk exist by weaving wool and silk. They pay no taxes or imposts of any kind. Baptisms, weddings and funerals all take place in the village of Laron in the valley below, and their burial practice is particularly worthy of note. Because of the difficulties encountered in transporting a coffin down the hillside, the inhabitants have devised an ingenious solution. They have constructed a wooden chute into which the deceased, in his coffin, is placed, and the coffin slides down the chute to be reclaimed at the bottom. The language they speak is a mixture of French and Spanish, and their numbers and manners have remained unchanged for several centuries. Our next stop was in Liguria, North Italy, and perhaps the country with the most legitimacy and the longest pedigree of all. Not far from Ventimiglia is the Principality of Seborga, a pocket sovereignty which dates to 954 and was never incorporated into any of the incarnations of the Italian peninsula. Even Mussolini is reported to have said, "For sure the Principato di Seborga does not belong to Italy." In the 1960s, the claims for independence were renewed. Institutions were refounded 1963 to 1995 when George Carbone, a local flour baron, was elected as Prince Giorgio I. In 1994, from a population of 308 citizens, all but 4 voted in favour of the Seborgan constitution. Seborga has continued to proudly assert its independence. It issues stamps, has its own coinage, the Luigino, it had its own mint since 1666, and symbols of sovereignty, and it claims to be recognised by about 20 conventional states. The next leg of our journey took us from Italy to the Dark Continent, the Senegal-Mauritania borderlands in West Africa, and the tiny Kingdom of Biffeche. First referred to in European writings in 1726, but with a much more ancient lineage, this miniature monarchy is, strangely enough, one of 4 African kingdoms that is ruled by a white king. In 1963, when the then king was in the process of abdicating, the people were undecided as to who should replace him. They sought advice from their Catholic priest, who suggested that they approach the person who had helped them the most in recent years. That person was one Edward Schaefer, an American businessman who was related to 2 European royal families, the Hohenzollerns and the Habsburgs. The American thus became the 100th king of Biffeche, ruling until his own death in 1997, by which time he had appointed his heir, Ronald of Innerrhein. King Edward had never visited his kingdom, but King Ronald I was determined that that was not going to happen again. Later in 1997, Ronald flew out to his kingdom. This momentous visit took place much to the amazement of the Biffeche people, who were unaware of the sad demise of their king, Edward, and of course they had absolutely no knowledge of King Ronald. They know him now, and he too is much revered. Taking our leave of the Biffeche people, we embarked on the long flight to Perth in Western Australia, from whence we would be travelling to the remote but enduring Principality of Hutt River province. Hutt River was proclaimed an independent principality on April the 21st, 1970 by Leonard Casley, afterwards Prince Leonard, a wheat farmer who fell out with the Australian government over wheat quotas.
This is a very nice map I got recently from Poland, a map of the world. Now there's Australia. Now the capital of Australia is Canberra. They forgot to put it on. Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, very large cities. They forgot to put them on. Adelaide, Perth and Darwin, very large towns. They forgot to put them on. But they put Hutt River Province on. It's a very good map.